Good afternoon, friends. Important video, and I'm doing interplay with a service tax leviable on reimbursement of expenses in pre-GST era versus GST is applicable on reimbursement of expenses. Recently, the principal bench CESTAT Delhi has pronounced a judgment in the service tax appeal number 52708 of 2016 and held no service tax going to be levied on reimbursement of expenses, irrespective of fact what is the nature and classification of service. So any service, if there is reimbursement of expenses, no service tax leviable. Honorable CESTAT has relied the Honorable Supreme Court judgment in the case of Intercontinental Consultant and Technocrats Private Limited. This judgment, Honorable Supreme Court has affirmed that Rule 5, which is talking about inclusion of expenses in the valuation, Rule 5 of Service Tax Determination Valuation Rule 2006, held as ultra vires, Section 67 of Finance Act 1994. So क्वेश्चन ये था कि क्या सर्विस टैक्स लगेगा फॉर रीइंबर्समेंट ऑफ एक्सपेंसेस. As per Honorable Delhi CESTAT clearly said, no service tax नहीं लगेगा on reimbursement of expenses, चाहे कोई भी क्लासिफिकेशन किसी भी नेचर की सर्विस दी गई हो, तो यानी रिम्बर्समेंट के ऊपर सर्विस टैक्स नहीं लगेगा. और इस जजमेंट में supplier of service is engaged in as a event management service, as a turnkey contract, and he has engaged certain subcontractor for the provision of services, or pertaining to these subcontractor, he is claiming reimbursement of expenses from the client, from the service recipient. And that was the question, whether this reimbursement of expenses which is being claimed towards the subcontractor, payment made to the subcontractor with a service tax leviable, and it is event management service, held categorically no service tax on reimbursement of expenses, irrespective of fact क्या नेचर है, कौन सी नेचर है सर्विस की, क्लासिफिकेशन क्या है, and relied on Supreme Court judgment, that is the Intercontinental Consultant and Technocrats Private Limited, whereby Rule 5 held ultra vires, Section 67 of Finance Act 1994. But one thing you must know, that with effect from 14th May 2015, this Section 67 got amended. So, as per amended provision, Section 67 of Finance Act 1994, service tax going to be levied on reimbursement of expenses. This is the clarity I wanted to pass on. Come back to GST. With the reimbursement of expenses chargeable to GST, As per section 15 subsection 1, which talks about valuation for the chargeability of GST, it is categorically saying price paid or payable, transaction value, so the supply of goods or services. And two condition, that such price should be the sole consideration, and supplier and recipient should not be the related parties. So transaction value is the value for the chargeability of GST. Now question is reimbursement of expenses. Let's take an example. Okay, you are a supplier of service and you have quoted your fees as 1 lakh rupees and 20,000 rupees you are charging towards reimbursement for fooding, lodging, boarding, travel and conveyance. So 1 lakh is your fees, 20,000 is the expenses as a reimbursement you're charging from your client. With the GST leviable, under section 15 subsection 2 clause A, we have to include all other duties and taxes except CGST, SGST, UTGST, IGST and compensation cess we have to include in our valuation. Clause B says any expenses which is supplier is liable but incurred by the recipient. Supplier is liable but incurred by the recipient and that is not included in price paid or payable need to be included. Section 15 subsection 2 clause C says any incidental expenses in respect of supply of goods or services need to be included in the valuation for the chargeability of GST. यानी आप जो 20,000 रुपये रीइंबर्समेंट चार्ज कर रहे हैं, that is called incidental expenses, or it is pertaining to in respect of supply of services. GST लगेगा, GST 1,20,000 रुपये पे लगेगा from day 1 July 1 2017, no dispute. एक सिचुएशन और क्रिएट करते हैं कि मैंने 1,20,000 रुपये कोट किए इंक्लूडिंग ऑल माई एक्सपेंसेस, फूडिंग, लॉजिंग, बोर्डिंग, ट्रैवल एंड कन्वेंस, बट क्लाइंट ने, सर्विस रिसिपिएंट ने, he has incurred the expenses of 20,000 rupees for arranging fooding, lodging, boarding, travel, conveyance. So recipient has incurred 20,000 rupees. So supplier, while raising the invoice, he will only charge 1 lakh rupees because he is supposed to get only 1 lakh, though the quotation was 1,20,000. But question is whether this 20,000 which is incurred by the recipient need to be included in overall valuation for the chargeability of GST. Answer is yes, because supplier was liable but incurred by the recipient and which was not included in the price paid or payable, hence need to be included as per section 15 subsection 2 clause B of CGST Act. So reimbursement of expenses in GST need to be included, आपको include करना पड़ेगा in overall valuation for the chargeability of GST. So this video we have tried to explain chargeability of service tax in pre-GST era and chargeability of GST in GST era on reimbursement of expenses. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.